Shakumako, everyone. Welcome to this week's Iraq Briefing, where we discuss the top stories shaping Iraq today. I'm Erik Gustafson.
And I'm Omar Nadawi.
This week, the mercurial Muqtada al-Sadr told his followers to update their voter registrations. So today's main topic and the question for all Iraq watchers right now is Muqtada al-Sadr planning to return to the political arena? So Omar, Muqtada al-Sadr seems to have had 9 political lives over the years. Could you briefly walk us through his many incarnations from opposing the U.S. military presence following the 2003 U.S.-led invasion until now?
Muqtada al-Sadr has had a very colorful history in politics and in military engagements or paramilitary engagements, having picked up arms or instructed his followers to pick up arms against U.S. presence from day one, really, in 2003. While at the same time had his other foot in politics. So while fighting the U.S., he also had his followers organize into a political movement that joined elections, participated in elections, was part of the Shia coalition that emerged to take over the first elected government in Iraq, while also, maintaining a strong militia presence. The Mahdi army, in its various incarnations and labels, was a big player in the sectarian violence and the sectarian cleansing that took place in Iraq, Iraq South and Center, especially in Baghdad in 2006, 2007. Later had a fallout with Prime Minister Noor al-Maliki, who turned on him and conducted a large military operation against Sadr's militia. Sadr fled to Iran for a few years to escape the pressure, only to come back actually in support of Noor al-Maliki getting a second term with Iranian encouragement, and personally resurfaced later, trying to create the persona of a nationalist, tolerant figure, and started actually to oppose Maliki. He was one of the people who led the calls for ousting Maliki when Maliki's authoritarian tendencies started to raise alarm. In the following years, Muqtada al-Sadr even became or tried to portray himself as a champion for reforms, leading and organizing protests and hijacking, in cases, popular protests for reforms in 2015, 2016, and later even in 2019 when the Tishreen movement picked up steam in Iraq. But again, Muqtada al-Sadr always has had this desire to be in charge. And I think we talked about this in a previous conversation when the U.S. assassinated Qasem Soleimani and Abu Bakr Muhandis in January of 2020. That event triggered another shift in Sadr's position. He turned on the protesters and started his own crackdown against them. So he has been on pretty much every possible side of the political equation in Iraq. When the next parliamentary election took place after the Tishreen protests in 2021, Muqtada al-Sadr actually came on top. His followers won a plurality of seats in parliament, 73 seats, and he was planning to form the next government in cooperation with Mohammed al-Halbousi, the former Speaker of Parliament, and with the KDP, a project that was trying to actually exclude some of the more militant factions within the coordination framework, some of Iran's strongest allies in Iraq. That project faced a lot of opposition. The two sides clashed militarily. Muqtada al-Sadr's followers infamously stormed parliament and camped out there for several days. It was a very, very messy summer in 2022 that ended up with Sadr suddenly deciding to order his representatives in parliament to resign. And for, I don't know, the 6th or 7th time, announced that he was boycotting politics and that he was staying out of the political process forever. Something that we have heard from him in the past, and no one really took very seriously because he had said it so many times. But this time, he actually followed with an announcement that he was going to also boycott the provincial elections that took place in 2023. So Muqtada al-Sadr has been largely mostly really out of electoral politics, but not entirely out of politics. And before we hit record, you were telling me something about an incident with Sweden.
You're right. Like there was that incident we were just talking about with the embassy of Sweden. There was a protest in Stockholm. I believe there was a protester who was going to burn a Quran, and that created a huge negative reaction in Iraq. And the Sadrist movement, Muqtada Sadr's supporters, actually stormed the embassy of Sweden and set it on fire. So yeah, even when he's boycotting politics, he occasionally re-enters for a protest here or there.
Back to current events. This week, Muqtada al-Sadr issued a message to his followers saying, you should register or you should update your voter registration records, whether or not we're going to, or you are going to participate in elections. And that really caught my interest because Muqtada al-Sadr typically uses this method of basically planted questions in order to issue announcements. So he would put something on social media saying that one of his followers sent him this question, and then he posts the response publicly. That's his way of, okay, no one has solicited any advice, but he wants to say something. So he packages it as a response to a follower's inquiry. So he said, go ahead and update your registration. But within a day, some of Sadr's aides were also visiting voter registration offices to see what's going on, how the process is going. One of Sadr's senior aides and former representatives in parliament also spoke about this. So there's definitely smoke happening. There is definitely a possibility, I think, that Sadr will be or is at least considering a return to electoral politics when Iraq holds the next parliamentary election later this year.
It's almost like the approach of being the learned religious scholar who is standing back, and then the followers come and ask you questions and you answer them. It seems like that he's taking that approach. What is the relationship like right now between Muqtada al-Sadr and the Shia coordination framework, which of course includes a lot of these Iran-backed militias? And in addition to that, of course, what's the relationship like between Muqtada al-Sadr and the current prime minister, Mohammed al-Sudani?
In 2022, when Sadr decided to pull his MPs from parliament, basically that allowed the coordination framework to form a government. And it's a government of Mohammed al-Sudani. Sadr was vehemently opposed to having Mohammed al-Sudani as prime minister because at the time, Sudani was seen as a protege of Noor al-Maliki. And if there's one thing that Sadr has always opposed is something that would be considered a third term for Noor al-Maliki because of their relationship as arch enemies. So Sadr has been basically in the opposition, being on the sidelines, taking shots at the government, trying to push for certain legislations whenever he had something that he had an interest in. In the past couple of years, he pushed for a legislation that formally criminalized any form of normalization with Israel. He's always continued his rhetoric about getting the US out of Iraq, and especially when it became something that could embarrass the coordination framework government, because he's not in charge. They are in charge. They have to deal with the fallout of what it means to put pressure on the US or to push for US withdrawal from Iraq.
So finally, do you see Sadr's faction running in the upcoming parliamentary elections? I believe they're scheduled by the end of this year, tentatively. And what's your forecast?
I think that's a very strong possibility right now, to be honest. I think I would give it more than 60% chance. I think Sadr has taken the time to reassess the situation, and he is seeing that Iran is weakened. He's seeing that Iran's allies are potentially weakened and on their back foot, and that they are more or less divided. So he's probably seeing an opportunity for himself to make a comeback and capitalize on the weakness of his traditional rivals. He probably also sees a potential for, working with Mohammed al-Sudani instead of working against him. That because of the way that Mohammed al-Sudani kind of distanced himself from Nur al-Maliki in the past, and the tendency, I think, also for the political establishment, for those in parliament, to not want to give chance for a prime minister to stay for a second term. So maybe perhaps Sadr thinks that this allows him an opportunity to lend his support to Sudani and at the same time weaken his rivals and steal a spot from them in the next election. We'll see.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Omar. So now some of the other top developments in our latest Iraq report. There are reports that Sunni politicians, including Parliament Speaker Mahmoud al-Mashadani, approached Iranian officials seeking permission for displaced residents to return to Jerfa al-Sadr. Iran reportedly promised support, but no firm timeline was set. Iraq's Communications and Media Commission, the CMC, ordered the Ministry of Telecommunications to cut internet service to Cleric Telecom over alleged unpaid debts and license violations. Cleric called it a dangerous precedent, accusing the CMC of trying to undermine a previous settlement agreement. Two separate explosions involving leftover munitions claimed the lives of 4 civilians, including 3 children, and wounded 3 others. These tragic incidents highlight the ongoing risk of explosive remnants of war across Iraq. And the clashes broke out on February 17th between Kurdish farmers and the Iraqi army troops over disputed land near Kirkuk. The KRG condemned the army's actions, and Prime Minister Sudani called for an investigation, urging calm while tensions remain high. So that's it for your Iraq briefing this week. For more news and analysis, please join us at enablingpeace.org. And if you value this content, please like and subscribe and share us with your friends. Until next time, masalama.